welcome to my Travel Ones podcast. Today, I'm lucky to have Chris Hansen. How are you today, Chris?
I'm good, Peter. Thanks for having me.
Appreciate you being on the show. It's interesting hearing your voice and talking to you in person after watching you and listening to you for
at least I'm not
decades.
telling you to have a seat right over there. Huh?
Guaranteed. And by the way, congrats on your show, Have a Seat, on the YouTube channel.
Thank you very much.
It's great that you it was like 330,000 subscribers on that show.
Yeah, I think we're at 350, 356,
okay.
something like that. It's interesting because I got into the YouTube digital world really not knowing what to expect, but knowing that, in this day and age, I needed a footprint there.
Yeah.
And hit on a couple of stories early on, and all of a sudden you wake up with, hundreds of thousands of followers, and then you have the responsibility to feed this property with content. And so we've covered everything from some of the stories that now have turned into television series on Discovery Plus and Louisiana in Real Life, Peter Nygaard investigation, the huge predator, to breaking news. And literally during the height of the pandemic, because of my contacts, here in Michigan and in New York, where I also live, we were able to get a lot of people and a lot of information out in this very informal way, but we had a lot of followers. I mean, we were lucky enough during the pandemic to, for instance, on one show have, a husband and wife emergency room doctor team. One worked in Brooklyn at Ground Zero, the other was in Manhattan. Their children who they had not seen because of the pandemic were with their grandparents in Staten Island, a nurse at U of M Medical Center, and two restaurant owners from New York, all in one show in this, albeit somewhat unwieldy setting. But the exchange of information and the importance of that information, then talking to somebody with the emergency task force in New York in the middle of it all, between the pandemic and the civil strife that we saw after the George Floyd killing, it became an important place for people to go for news. And it was an honor to be in the thick of it and to have the ability to throw a show like that together in such a short period of time. Because as you know, as a podcaster, you need your computer, camera, and a mic, and everybody else is remote.
Yeah. Well, that was one of the things I was going to ask you too. Is you've been doing this since 1981, being a reporter. You're one of the few people.
Nobody likes a tattletale.
I'm sorry. Nothing they can't Wikipedia. You're one of a lot of people graduate college now and then end up not doing what they graduated in. You, on the other hand, I mean, you wanted to be a journalist, and your career ended up being a journalist. That's a rare thing nowadays. Oh, I think we froze.
Well, I was very fortunate,
we're freezing a little bit.
I was very fortunate, Peter, because as a young guy, am I? How's it now?
Now it's good.
Yeah, back. Okay, good. I was lucky because when I was 14, 15 years old, I actually lived a mile and a half from where Jimmy Hoffa was last seen and presumably kidnapped in Bloomfield Township, Michigan. And I became fascinated with the story. I used to ride my bike up there and check out the crime scene, and the FBI agents were there, the police reporters, and ultimately network correspondents. And so I kind of got bit by the bug back then. And so a few years later, when I went off to college at Michigan State, I signed up for the, college radio station and became a reporter. I joke that I've only had, 3 jobs in my life. I was a baker's apprentice for 4 years. I was a drywall hauler for 3 years, and then I became a journalist. So that's the extent of
rare.
My experience.
That's a rare thing, though.
Yeah, no, I've been very lucky.
I can only imagine how much being a journalist has changed from the 80s, pre-computers, pre-cell phones, just being a salesman and traveling with no phone, and to nowadays,
Oh, it's amazing. I mean, think about when I was at the NBC affiliate in Lansing, Michigan, as a senior in college, and then for a year or so afterwards, covering the state capitol, we would shoot our story. They were on 3/4 inch tapes. We'd edit the story. We had no transmission between the office newsroom in Lansing, Michigan, and the broadcast studios in Jackson, Michigan. So each day, you had to have your story done and edited to give to the evening anchor, who would then drive to Jackson. So the tapes would go in for the 6 o'clock news and be in order. And then you would drive them out there for the 11 o'clock. Today, one of my sons is a reporter. He's in Oklahoma City, but when he started in northern Michigan in Traverse City, literally he would shoot his own story. He would go to a Starbucks on a laptop, edit it. He would hit a button, it would go to the station. He would then go to the location, set up his camera, turn the viewfinder backwards, do his own live shot, and that was it. He was completely remote with nothing but a camera and a laptop and a backpack. And so the change in technology has been incredible. I mean, even in the last few years, even from, imagine, I started at NBC in '93 after being in local news for a number of years, and watched an incredible transition from analog editing, where the lawyers changed something at the last minute. You had that much space to squeeze whatever the script was into that space. But once it went to digital, they could extend a shot, they could freeze a shot, they could do all kinds of magic with it. But I remember literally, being in an audio booth with a producer with a stopwatch because of some change or an updated thing, and having to hit that, and it was my experience in radio from being a kid in radio that, 13 seconds is 13 seconds, and you can hear it, so you can hit the margin. But that had to fit, up until, really around 9/11, right around then is when everybody went digital.
Yeah. Early 2000s. I mean, that was, you did a lot of traveling. It covered, the Oklahoma City bombings. Yeah. I mean, the Columbine. What was it like when you were at Dateline and you're married, you have children, and they go, "Hey, this happened, you got to go"?
Well, you do have to go, and that's the job. I can remember when I started at NBC, it was actually as a correspondent for a news magazine called Now with Tom Brokaw and Katie Couric, and I was one of the 4 or 5 correspondents, and Jeb Sucker was the executive producer. And not only was it my first network experience, for the most part, it was my first time being a news magazine correspondent, which means it's a different kind of storytelling, it's a different kind of rhythm, and I was very fortunate to work with senior producers who managed me through that transition. It's not an automatic thing. But we didn't have at Now, we didn't have a library, so we started, and we didn't know what was going to be on to fill an hour on Wednesday at 9 o'clock. So I was the breaking news guy. So literally for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks, we'd decide what story it was going to be on a Friday or Saturday. Sunday, I would get on a plane, work straight through, get the piece done by 9 o'clock on Wednesday, go to the staff meeting Thursday, sleep Friday, Saturday, and wait for the phone to ring and get on the plane again. So whether it was, the tragic case of Polly Klaas or the Unabomber, or, so many, the aftermath of Waco, or so many other things that were, breaking and happening in those early days at NBC News, it was constant, turning, and it was exciting. It was a great learning experience. But you do manage to, at some point, I always tell people when it comes to travel, how do you do it? How do you survive it? Well, it gets to be, and as a salesman, I'm sure you know this because you travel all the time. It's like, I tell people, it's like shaving. It's just something you do before you go to work.
Yeah.
You know where you're going, you know the airport, you know how long it takes to get there. You have it down to a system. You have all the cards and the gizmos and the status to work your way through it. And you can't get all verklempt about the weather or the flight is late, because it's wasted energy.
Yeah.
It's going to happen. I found myself yesterday on the plane flying here to Michigan from New York, easy flight, hour and 15 minutes, done it a million times, literally like 4 times a month. And, because now the planes are at full capacity.
Yeah.
And because the APU wasn't working in the back, it's hot. And I've got a good seat, but it's, it's jammed in there, and I'm getting irritated. I had to say to myself, all right, literally in 2 hours, you're going to be at Cantoro's having Italian dinner in Canton, Michigan on the way home. Yeah. This isn't that bad. Just
you'll be okay.
But, it's during the pandemic, once everybody was flying again, I stayed put here in Michigan, worked from here remotely, shooting interviews and doing stuff. But I could leave the apartment in Midtown Manhattan at 11:15 in the morning on a Thursday or Friday, and literally be through security at LaGuardia by 11:45. I mean,
Crazy.
through security looking for a cup of coffee.
Yeah.
And then those days are gone.
We're back to normal.
Yeah, yesterday traffic was absolutely back to normal.
Yeah.
Between Midtown Manhattan and
I flew out of LAX. I did the same thing. The 405 freeways, notoriously horrific.
oh yeah,
Anytime, any day, it doesn't matter. And you drive on it, you'd be like, oh, okay. I just drove past Santa Monica with no traffic. And then
Yeah.
LAX was the same way. I went to LAX. I took some videos. I landed from Denver back into LA, and there was nobody except for our flight in the terminal. And it was like 8:30 at night.
Yeah, I mean, we did. Obviously, I'm in LA a ton for work and shoots and different things, and we were careful, obviously, during the pandemic. We followed all the guidelines, the CDC, and all that stuff, and I was tested a ton just out of the abundance of caution. But I was not Howard Hughes. I had to work. I had to travel.
Yeah, exactly.
I had to get to LA, and so we did so. And the seats, so many available seats.
Oh yeah,
so long. And Delta just, May 1st went back to putting people in the middle seat, which I understand is an economic reality of surviving. But it was nice to have.
It was nice. It was nice having them rows.
Yeah, and I think Delta did a really fine job for the most part during the pandemic managing that. I think from a corporate communication standpoint, I think they, were right on the top of the list.
And my neighbors are actually flight attendants for Delta.
Yeah.
So I was getting the daily update.
Oh yeah.
Of their once a week flight to and they were pretty far up so they didn't get cut, but they weren't flying.
Right. Yeah, it was tough to go for a lot of people, obviously the airline industry for a while. I mean, thankfully there was government assistance to get people through it, but it was, and then there was so much unknown, about the virus and how you get it, and, how it's transmitted, that people on the front line.
How deadly is it? How fatal? How everything? Yeah.
Look, it's a risk, just like we felt terrorism and continued terrorist attacks were a risk after 9/11. I mean, I remember sitting up front, on a flight into DC from New York, and having a flight attendant literally look at me and say, and other guys sitting in the same area, if something happens, you guys are my last line of defense. I'm going to count on you to make sure nobody gets in the cockpit door. I mean, those were real life conversations in 2001 after the September 11th attacks. I mean, you shudder to think back.
Bizarre,
Obviously we've tightened things up. Obviously intelligence has gotten better, and security has gotten better. But I mean, it's hard to believe. First of all, it's been going on 20 years now.
But yeah, that's like my daughters are 26 and 27, and I try to explain to them what it was like flying prior to 9/11. Like just show up. Yeah, you guys could come to the gate with me. You could see me off.
I can remember flying before there were metal detectors.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
I mean, I remember, when I was I'm trying to think, when I was a young reporter in Tampa, I went from Lansing to Tampa, and I'd come back to Detroit to see my folks at the holidays, and my dad would, on Eastern Airlines, park. We'd get the bag, we'd go right to the gate, he'd wait, make sure I got, I was a 22-year-old man who had traveled, but your dad's your dad, and we'd wait at the very last minute to make sure you got on the plane. He traveled, so I learned travel tricks from him. He was a salesman, and back in the day when, an upgrade was $15, and if you're on a 747, there was a piano bar on the upper deck, and
the ashtrays.
Yeah, ashtrays and martinis.
Like real ashtrays that you could smoke.
Yeah. Oh, it was. I mean, I can still remember smoking on a plane, way back when, which seems thoroughly vile now.
Now I can't. Now in California, you can't. And I don't smoke, but you can't smoke in a park walking down the street.
Yeah, I mean, I've been smoking 30 years, but it was back, when you're a young
Yeah.
reporter in the 80s, 70s, and 80s, everybody couldn't talk, smoke cigarettes, got their voice lower, or thought they did.
How did you balance, I mean, it's one thing, like, so I'm with you, like, for me, it's no big deal to go on a trip. Like, I could go on a trip. I have my 3 to 4 day bag already set to go, because that's pretty much what I take. If I have to go longer, I can pack. But how is it for your wife, your kids, your family, your friends? You know, it's one thing for you to be a gypsy and just take off and be gone for 4 or 5 days. And
I've
then,
always tried to, make up for it with the kids, at least in quality time.
yeah,
When the two oldest boys were younger, we whether it was skiing down a mountain or going boating, or I always tried to pack a lot in a short period of time. So
yeah,
I think besides being able to take them traveling a lot when they were kids, whether it was London or skiing around the country, they became good travelers early on,
yeah,
and I think that's a gift that you can give a kid. The two youngest who are in college now, they're extremely good travelers. We've been all over the place, and so if you can experience some of that together, and when the two oldest ones are really young, if I went to India, for instance, on an investigation into child slave labor, I'd be gone for 8 days, and I always try to keep it to no longer than 8 days.
yeah,
But when I get home, it was an event. I had all kinds of crazy things I found along the way,
yeah,
and even the dog would be excited to get his gift.
yeah,
So, I think up for the time that you're gone. I mean, kids are generally busy anyway with school
sure,
and activities and stuff, and so if you manage it, and my what I learned over the years is that you can't, whether it's today being in New York or LA for 4 or 5 days and walking into the house here in Michigan, or 25 years ago being gone on a trip someplace and covering up the Oklahoma City bomb going down. So you can't walk in and reassert your
yeah,
immediately your
yeah,
dad influence or leadership influence on the household. People have been doing just fine without you there. Everybody's been getting to where they need to go. Cars are getting fueled and driving around, and lawns are getting cut. Everything's happening. The world moves along without you. So you have to sometimes, I think, when you've been gone a little bit, ease back into the home life and
yeah.
try not to, where's this, where's that? I need, boss everybody around and then you walk in the door.
My thing is, like, when I get off a trip, the last thing I want to do is eat in a restaurant, because I've just eaten 3 meals a day in a restaurant for a week. But my wife wants to go out.
Yeah, to get out. Yeah.
So
No.
I always say, give me a day, and then we'll go out and hit something.
Yeah. See, it's today, because everybody's grown up and
Yeah,
they're on their own. It's easy. We have it down to I don't even consider, quite honestly, the New York to Michigan travel. To me, it's
just
I've got
yeah.
buddies who have homes in this suburb who have also have homes in northern Michigan in beautiful communities up there.
UP.
Not even in the UP, but just Harbor Springs or Petoskey,
Okay.
whatever. Their commute to get from their office in Birmingham, Michigan,
Longer.
Harbor Springs is longer than me to get from my office or our apartment in New York to get to this house, and so it's it's a lot of travel cumulatively, but it's easy duty.
Well, I think that goes back to technology. I mean, I'm sure at NBC in the 80s or in the 90s, I guess, when you were there, 93, they had travel managers. Like,
Oh yeah,
I mean,
yeah. No, when you book travel,
yeah,
your assistant would book the travel, and you get like a triplicate. I mean, an envelope that was this thick with all your stuff and details, and it was so much paper.
yeah.
Ultimately, I remember when they wanted everybody to book their own travel online. It was, I don't understand how to do it. And then once you did it, it was like you didn't want anybody else to touch your travel. Nobody can do it as well as you can do it.
Exactly.
And make sure you pick the right flight and get the upgrade, and whatever you needed to do.
That's the amazing part, is how much it's changed, because it literally killed an industry. I mean, you think about the phone has grown, but it's also, the technology has killed industries.
Oh yeah, I think so too. I mean, I have a cousin who's a travel agent, and now she does. I mean, she still, does
Vacations and
client
yeah,
travel stuff, but it's not the career it once was.
yeah,
I mean, she manages to do it, special clients and people, and big events and groups, and cruises down the Danube and things like that. But I mean,
right,
she's got 3 other gigs. That she dabbles in. It's just not the same
yeah,
business.
yeah. That's I imagine traveling now without your phone.
Well, you get panicky when the battery gets low, or I mean, you can't even
Yeah,
check into your flight. You can't even board the airplane if your phone dies, because your
yeah,
your your boarding pass is right there. I mean, I don't get paper anymore. I mean, if I'm going from New York to LA and I go through the area where they just automatically print your ticket, it's fine. It just means I don't have to get the phone out to do it. But it's just another piece of paper in my pocket anymore.
I don't get one either.
I don't need to fuss with it.
But when you're traveling, whether it's an hour flight to Michigan or anywhere, how do you fill up your time? Do you try and relax? Do you read? Do you listen to music?
I read. I always have a book that I carry with me. I always
Okay.
have, my music going. I always carry the iPad as well for, I've got Netflix downloaded on that, or
Yeah.
some things that I either want to see or should see. I usually have some work. I have a rough cut of something or a pitch that I'm working on for a future project, and I'll try to catch up on a movie that I haven't seen. The airlines are typically notoriously behind in the new releases, but there's usually something I haven't seen, and
Yeah.
depending on the length of the flight, I try to do a couple different things. I try to see a movie, get some work done, and then read whatever book I'm carrying.
Yeah. I try and do the same thing. I
Yeah,
tend to
it
watch it.
breaks it up. I mean, I remember the first time I flew from New York to Hong Kong, which is 16 and a half hours, as I recall. And just it was a bit daunting that you're going to be in a steel tube for that long.
Yeah.
And so you can't just stay awake the whole time. You can't drink wine the whole time. You can't read the same book the whole time. You have to really plan your day out,
It's
because
a full day. Yeah.
you leave at 2 p.m. New York time, and you get in at 8:30 at night the following day. So
Yeah.
you live with the time change and everything. You live in 2 days, so you need to get comfortable, do your work, eat, drink, watch a movie, sleep, then get up and do it all over again, because you're going to land at 8:30, and at 9 o'clock you're going to be at the hotel meeting with the crew and producer to get up and go to work the next morning.
Yeah.
There's no day of transitioning and I'll go to the Foreign Correspondence Club or something. I mean, you gotta go to work. It's not a vacation. So
Do you have any tips on how to get over jet lag?
you know, jet lag is. I always brag that jet lag never affects me until it does. You get back from Asia or India or something, and the first day you go for a run, and this is great. I'm powerful
Yeah.
man.
I'm good.
Jet lag doesn't get me, and then the next day you think your aorta is coming undone because you're feeling so weird and out of whack. The reality is, I think that it's a day for each hour of time change to fully recover.
Okay.
I found, and again, if it's a 3 hour time change from LA to New York, it's not, it doesn't really affect it. But it you get into the 12-hour time changes, or 11 and a half hours,
Yeah.
sometimes, and it whacks you out.
Yeah.
And I think you just got to stay hydrated, um, and sleep when you can, and you work your way through it in a couple of days usually.
Have you found, like, for me, going back east and going behind hours, not east, but going west, I guess, to the far east is messes me up more than when I go to Europe, or if I go that way.
Yeah, I think anytime you change a day, I mean, Europe, if you leave New York for London, it's,
3 hours. Yeah.
the 9 p.m. flight gets in at 6 in the morning, whatever it is. And if you're lucky enough to get to the hotel room early, and they'll let you take your nap, and you go from there. London's pretty easy. But it does, Asia, you get into Asia or Africa, or, you do the 1 6 hour flight into Brussels, and then you got, 3 hours waiting around, and you get on the other 6-hour flight to Sierra Leone. I mean, that's the Twilight Zone. You just
Exactly.
gotta hang on for your life and hope for the best.
Where have you not gone that you want to see still?
I believe it or not, I have not been to anywhere in Scandinavia, Sweden or Denmark or any of that. And I have, that's some of my heritage. So I need to go do that. I've not been to Eastern Europe, Prague or, Croatia or any of that, Serbia, which I want to do. Never been to Australia. Never been to Hawaii, actually.
What?
I know. Out of all the correspondents, 20 years at NBC, and they used to make fun of me because I never ever
been to Hawaii.
Mandatory in Hawaii. Everywhere else, every other state in the union besides Hawaii, Alaska, I've been. But never.
There's got to be we got to come up with a show for you to.
Well, yeah, I know. I got to do something. And it's we talk about it all the time, and that they're promoting the bejesus out of going to Hawaii right now. I must know 3 people.
Exactly.
One of my sons is going there with his girlfriend. And honestly, I just when it comes down to talking about where we're going to go, if I'm going to go to a tropical beach, there are tropical beaches that are 4 or 5 hours away.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it's beautiful. People think I'm a jerk for not wanting to go.
No.
I'm not burning to go do it. I would rather go to Turks and Caicos or we had a great time in Naples or
it's just odd that you haven't been there.
Yeah, I mean it's I guess I'd rather go to the south of France or Barcelona or someplace on the beach in the Algarve, Portugal. It's 6 hours to 6 hours. Hawaii is, I'm sure it's great. I'm sure if I went, I would love it. But I just was never able to get a hook a story over there.
Well, see, like for me, it's my territory. So I have stores on 4 islands, and I tell people, I go, it's fun, but it's like for me, it's work. It's like I have to go from one island, and the next day I have to go to the next island, then I have to go to the next island. I have fun in between, but it's
sure. I mean, I have fun everywhere I go, whether it's Austin, Texas, or Guam. There's always something to do. Once you're finished working. You have to adopt. Traveling like you do or traveling like I do. You really have to just say, look, this is an adventure, not a hassle. You can't get all bogged down with the logistics or the car didn't pick me up on time or the hotel room wasn't ready or the key didn't work or you really just gotta make it an adventure. And to get all frustrated and ticked off it's counterproductive, and you just gotta, what's the worst thing that could happen? Well, we'll figure it out when it does.
Yeah, exactly.
Otherwise, otherwise you're in this constant, stressful environment. It's not, there's enough going on without having to deal with that.
Have you always been that way?
No. I used to be really worried about the flight. Was the tail system working right in the 737, and they've done so many reports on crashes and things. And, you can let yourself get a little. I mean, I remember the first time flying overseas to Europe in 1994, I think it was. First time at 34 years old, the first time I'd been to Europe, and it was before ABC, and nighttime flight, and realizing I'm over the ocean. And ETOPS, and that they can land and do all this stuff, but you can let your mind wander. At some point, it's you have no control. You just have to cede control.
Yeah.
If you're afraid of flying, usually it's a control issue. And I've always found that the more you do it, that if this is the way they're going to take me, they're going to take me this way.
Yeah, see, I'm the same way. My wife's, have a good flight. I'm like, you better talk to the pilot. It has nothing to do with me. I just get on the plane.
No, Gabriel's a great flyer. The kids are great flyers. We march right through, and you get the best seat you can, and if you can
get there and
swing the upgrade, you're great.
Upgrades are nice.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate the time. But what do you have going on, and what's?
So we have 2 series now on Discovery Plus, which is Discovery Network's streaming service, which is doing very well. We have Onision in Real Life, which is a series looking into a YouTube predator that is just absolutely mind-boggling, and will open your eyes to what goes on, what can go on YouTube, and what YouTube is not doing about it. The fourth part of that series comes out on May 27th. The first three are out now. And the other series on Discovery Plus is Unseemly, the Peter Nygaard investigation, which is an in-depth investigation into a multi-millionaire fashion mogul who was probably the worst, most vile predator I've ever covered. And this guy went beyond for 50 years, and hundreds and hundreds of victims, up to and including underage girls in the Bahamas, where he had an estate who was drugging and forcing into sex, impregnating them, forced abortions, harvesting stem cells from the fetuses, who injected himself in this, this bizarre, according to investigators, ritual of trying to stay young forever. So it's an eye-opening full-length series on Discovery Plus as well. And then we have a number of other television shows in the works. We have a new Predator series in the works for TV. We've got some new Predator material on the YouTube channel, Have a Seat with Chris Hansen. We've got the podcast, Predators I've Caught with Chris Hansen, and Instagram and Twitter, and it's all going. It made me tired just listing them all off. Continue to be a lucky guy with a lot of work.
That's exactly right. That's how I feel too. So
yeah,
being busy is a good thing, especially after the last year.
Well, good. Well, I'll go online and check out some Stetson boots, and I'll give you a call, and we'll try and see what we can figure out.
I'll get you a pair. You got a deal.
Wearing proudly.
Thank you, Chris. I appreciate the time.
Peter, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Good luck with everything.
Thanks, buddy.
All right. Speak soon.
Bye-bye.